All together. Good evening.
Good evening.
Perfect. Thank you all for coming tonight. My name is George Seafried. I'm the current president of ESLA. I welcome you. I appreciate you all coming. We have a great program again tonight. We're going to hear a couple of things that are probably going to surprise us. So thank you for coming. If you had the opportunity, hopefully you were able to join us last month, which was our annual meeting and a big celebration of our 75th anniversary. If you were able to be here, I hope you had a great time. We've heard a lot of great things, and there was a bunch of people put a lot of work into making that a fun event. So
it was awesome. Thank you.
Well, thank you. You won the door prize tonight.
Oh, did I?
I saw your name on the door prize.
So great. I just want to echo that.
Thank you. If you were not able to be there, a lot of folks put time and energy. Isn't this wonderful? The staff is just great. I love it. Thank you, Beth. A lot of people put work into putting this little publication together, and it's the history, 75-year history of the association. It started in 1950. If you have an opportunity and you did not get one at the event, pick one up tonight. We'd like everyone that's a member to have one of these. It's a great amount of history of what has been done over the years and the effect that the association has, a very positive effect on everything that's gone on in the community and around the watershed and our lakes and rivers. Little bit of sad news. Mary Beth Kazansky, who is here this evening, she's raising her hand. She has decided to retire from the board. She has been a very active board member, been the president, vice president, hold different positions for how many years, Mary Beth?
10.
10, probably 15, because it just slides right by, doesn't it? Yeah, but she decided to retire, so we want to thank you very much, Mary Beth, for all the work you've done for us. She says she's retiring, but yet she still is here. She's still doing some things in the background, so we thank you very much for doing what you can do for us. We've had some zone meetings. What I tried to do was to get people that live in the different zones. We have 5 zones around our lakes and rivers. And I tried to get people together in small groups. Just come, we're going to talk about what's going on in your area, if there's anything specific going on. Met with limited success. We have one last one that will be August 5th. It'll be held at the Elk Rapids Police Station meeting room at 10 o'clock in the morning. You'll get a notice about it. But if you decide that you'd like to hear a little bit about what's going on, other than a big venue like we have here, smaller group, maybe a little bit more open conversation, we'd like to have you come. So try to put that on your calendar. But we'll be sending out reminders for that. The things that we're doing here is really done through a lot of volunteerism. And what I'd like to say and ask is that if you're considering that you've got a couple hours a month and you'd like to just get a little more involved, please volunteer. You can go to our website, and on our website it lists our different committees and what the different committees do. And we'd appreciate it if you have some interest in any one of those committees to just contact us through the email, through our phone that we have, and someone will get back to you and try to arrange one-on-one and see if the two schedules can get together and some volunteer work. Just like tonight, we have a lot of volunteers that help with the food, help with the setup, help with the drinking. Well, not the drinking, but help with the serving. Help with the serving. How much drinking's going on back there? Okay. My faux pas. But that's what we'd like. We'd enjoy having more volunteers because there's a lot of work that goes on, and we'd like your help in that, accomplishing the work. Right now, a lot of you probably know Leslie Myers. She's been here and spoken to us. She's the Antrim County Drain Commissioner, and she's out talking to a lot of different groups. And she's letting them know about some of the things that Antrim County is focusing on as far as our lakes and rivers dams, basically. And there's three things that she's out there trying to get awareness of, and also that we are going to be hearing a lot more about in the next couple of years. And there are three problem areas, I guess I'd call it, in the way that our watershed drains water from all the way up at, even a 6-mile lake and even all the way down through the chain of lakes, and it ends up here in the bay. So the three areas of concern are, in Ellsworth, there is a pair of culverts. And if you kayak, at one time, maybe you have kayaks through these culverts, but these culverts are failing, and they're a problem. Antrim County is addressing that. They're trying to raise awareness, they're trying to put some design together, and they're trying to raise money to repair these culverts. So that's item number one. The second item is the Bel Air Dam. Several years ago, our organization, as well as others, worked with the Corps of Engineers and put together a study that went on for about 1.5 years to study the stability and the ability of the dams to handle large amounts of rainfall, large amounts of precipitation. And one of the results of that study was that the Bel Air Dam does not have the capacity, the hydraulic capacity, the flow of water through around the dam to handle these storms that we're having more frequently and more intense. So there's a big project going on there. It's already started, the engineering. They had she was able to obtain a $500,000 grant, so they're starting to do the engineering for that. That's the second project. Third project is right here in Elk Rapids. The Bridge Street has 2 culverts, if you've heard of Children's Pond. So our dam here is fine. There's no problem with the dam. It's structurally sound. It handles the capacity. But when there's high amounts of precipitation, the design of the dam is that the water only rises so high against the face of the dam, and then it starts to really go around the dam. And it goes around the dam by going through the culverts by the Kids Pond, and then out through the river by the library, out into the bay. Those 2 culverts need work. Those 2 culverts, similar to what's happening up in Ellsworth, are leaking, they're starting to fail. And fail doesn't mean they're going to collapse. It just means they're not handling what they were designed for, or what they should be designed for going forward. So there's going to be attention put on those over the next 2 or 3 years. So those are the 3 things you might start to hear about, and they might affect your pocketbook. You'll probably start to hear more about special assessment districts. And that is one thing that the county is planning on doing. They're evaluating whether or not they're going to put special assessment on riparian property owners. 2 different districts. One district north of the Bel Air Dam, another district south of the Bel Air Dam. So be aware of what's going on, just get involved, speak up, let everybody know what you think should be done as this unfolds. We have 2 more Sure Thing events, August 25th or 28th, and then September 25th. Hopefully you'll be able to make those. Those will be the last 2 of the year. We look forward to having a speaker from Flow for Love of Water talk about some of the things that they're involved in. And then we also have a representative from CAIC-SYSMA, which is sort of a semi-quasi-governmental organization that helps and works with us and other organizations to handle some of the invasives that are around our area, some invasive species of terrestrial plants. Talked about picking up the booklet if you haven't, and also if you also were at the annual meeting, these little mementos were made by Dean Ginther, and just a wonderful way that he uses his woodworking skills. But again, if you weren't at the meeting, please pick one up. It's a nice little memento celebrating again the 75 years. And while I'm hawking stuff here, over here on this table, and we're doing this at cost. There's no markup on this. We've got some bags, a carrying bag. We've got a couple of hats. If you'd like to have those, they all say Elk-Skegemog Lake Association on them. Please talk to the 2 ladies here at the desk. I'd be glad to sell them. Every one of them is just $20. And we've appreciated you by those. So, way to let our organization be known around the community. I think the last thing I'd like to say is that Sam Ogle, our lake biologist, who does all of our technical work, she's going to come on up here right now and start to tell us a little bit about things that have been going on the last couple of years that you might not be aware of. When you start to look at the amount of things that have been accomplished, it's pretty amazing what our organization does, and a lot of it is done on the back of this young lady right here. So.
Hi. All right, so I'm just going to quickly run through like some of our projects this year that we have going on. This is not all of them by any means. Just an introduction to me. My degree's in freshwater science and sustainability. This is my 7th year working at ESLA, and we've got over 15 projects this year. That is a picture of me holding a purple loosestrife, which is an invasive plant that we just dug up, the root. Okay, this chart here gives some it's like a general overview of some stuff that we've got going on. So since 2019, I've put in over 4,000 hours of work. I was gonna attempt to count the number of water quality tests that we've collected, and then I very quickly got overwhelmed. Not just by me, because we have volunteers who collect a lot of data as well. So I just said thousands. We've been a part of the volunteer lake monitoring program with Tip of the Mitt Watershed Council for 35 years, so we've collected somewhere around 700 data points, and we have 2 volunteers who go out and collect data on elk and Lattimore a handful of times a year. I've done 53 shoreline consultations since 2022, so that's roughly around 5,200 feet of shoreline that I've gone and taken a look at for erosion or invasive species, or any recommendations that people need or have concerns about. We've done, that's actually 12 lake learning tours now. So each tour is 2 hours long. We still have a couple more, we have 2 more, I think left this year. We go out for 2 hours on a pontoon that the Elk-Skegemog marina lends us, and we just talk about like basic lake ecology, like plankton and some geology, aquatic plants and fish and invasives. We have 42 miles of shoreline, so we have all of Lattimore and all of Elk, and then we go up the Torch River and to the Arwood Bridge. So every year I survey at least those 42 miles once, so it's like almost 300 miles of shoreline that are looked at every year for invasives. We've removed 126 sites, we've removed invasive species. We're in the lawsuit, and I've got almost 478 hours of legal work into the lawsuit that we're in. And then we've had 15 boat washing events since 2019, and then a few years ago we started doing road end surveys. So we've got volunteers, we have 20 road ends that come into the waters, and we have volunteers that go to each one and just fill out, like if they're seeing any invasive plants or erosion concerns, if it's used as a boat launch, that kind of thing. So we've done 100 surveys of our road ends as well. And that picture is of a boat wash event that we had at Whitewater Park. So you drive up on the yellow lines there, and then we spray down the boat with hot water, and we do that with Tip of the Mitt Watershed Council. So some of the other stuff that we work on, just like general water quality. So we'll look at algal blooms. That picture on the right is not algae, it's just pollen. Every year we get concerns because it looks like algae. It's just pollen. So look at foreign objects in the water, erosion concerns, some plant identification. People text me or email me pictures of plants all the time. So I have my cards. I'm happy to give you my cards and you send me whatever. I get calls about foam, anything that's concerning. We started doing plankton sampling 2 years ago. I think this is our 3rd year doing it. So 3 times a year we go out and take samples, spring, summer, and fall. We collect 10 samples. So 5 in Elk, 3 in Lattimore, and then 2 in the Torch River. They get analyzed at the Great Lakes Environmental Center in Traverse, but this is just giving us a general understanding of what's happening at the base of the food chain. I think that's this video. It is. you can kind of see, if you look really close, it's kind of bright in here, but you can see little friends moving around in there. And then these are just some pictures of some basic ones that we have. And then we're part of the a free program with NOAA called the Phytoplankton Monitoring Network. So I'm trained to identify 5 different types of harmful algae. So I've got 2 different sites this year that I take samples for every 2 weeks, ice out to ice in. And then I have a microscope at home, so I just go home and look at them, and I have not found any harmful algae, which is good. But there's another volunteer on the Rapid River who's found an invasive species doing that, Lattimore, which was concerning. And then because she found that, we were able to kind of let Eagle know, and then they were taking steps. So that's kind of a fun, like a citizen science program that they offer. And then we also do the Adopt a Stream program with the Watershed Center in Traverse City. So we have 2 sites. You go out and you sample for macroinvertebrates, which are like basically the tiny little bugs in the waters, like the mayflies and stoneflies, caddisflies. So we've been sampling the Rapid River, which is that picture on the left there, for at least, I think, 20 years. So we have a lot of data collected there. So macroinvertebrates are a really good water quality indicator. So different species have different pollution tolerances. So depending who you find can kind of tell you how the water is doing, or the local ecology. And then we've got Spencer Creek on that program as well. This follows a program through the state, and so all of that data is publicly available. All of our sites are good. Rapid River has a very good grade, we'll call it, every time. And it'll be interesting with Rapid River when they take the dam out to see if that kind of changes at all, but yeah. And then we do that twice a year. I can't remember if I said that. And we also do habitat assessments with that too. So understanding what is happening around the water. It talks about like how close is the nearest house, and if there's a vegetation buffer, things like that. I am on the Elk Record Shoreline Committee with the village. So I go to all the meetings, and we're working on addressing erosion concerns in the Elk River, basically downstream of well, that's not true. I guess at Rotary Park we're working on invasive species, but mostly downstream of the 31 bridge. So we've hired a contractor, we've gotten a grant for that. So I'm just kind of staying up to date on what's happening there, and then I offer any input that I may have, and we're working on coming up with plans to remove some of the invasives, and that picture there is autumn olive. So we'll hopefully start working on that this fall to remove some of those invasives. And then also there's big discussion around water access and where to allow that, how to allow that safely so that there isn't more erosion happening in the Elk River. These are the lake learning tours I already talked about, so we just go out for a couple hours. That picture in the middle kind of shows you, this is a variety of pictures. This is the one up here is bladderwort on the left, which is an aquatic plant, and then a loon platform, a lake learning tour, and then just a picture of the Ski-Mog shoreline. We have been discussing wakeboat awareness the past couple of years, so this is just like a general map of like the safe places to do that on Elk. There's tons of room to do it in the middle of it. Elk is a huge lake. So you gotta be in at least 15 feet of water, and which really, you can kind of see. I mean, there's a lot of room in Elk, so if you have questions, we can talk about that later. And then to kind of transition into what Joel's gonna talk about a little bit, the big part of my job in the summer is invasive species. So I do the surveys and site visits for them. I kind of come up with the plans and develop how we're gonna manage it or eradicate it. Last year we ESLA purchased some GoPros, so we're coming up with we have a new way that we're monitoring for invasive species. So I've got 2 GoPros I put on a pole, and one camera goes straight down and one goes out at like a 45. And I just lower it down, and then I can look at that footage when I get home, and you can identify most of the aquatic invasives. Some of the native potamogenes are harder to differentiate, but so we'll be able to hit different sites more quickly, and it's less weather dependent and it's less time in the field. So this year we'll be able to get that going. That picture is of some phragmites on Ski-Gemog there. And then last year, I discovered an invasive plant, which we have up here actually, curly leaf pondweed. And I knew it was in the Rapid River somewhere, or I knew it was in the Torch River somewhere, because every time I went to the Arwood launch, there was some on the launch pad. So last year I was looking for it, I found it in the Torch River, and then I found that in that dark green area in the rapid there, it is very dense with curly leaf, so this is an aquatic invasive plant. So then this year, we were kind of discussing what the plan is gonna be with it. There's also Eurasian water milfoil mixed in there, but the curly leaf is by far the bigger concern. So I've been spending this season kind of understanding the boundaries of it, like how far upstream it goes in the rapid. And unfortunately, I just last week discovered that I think that the source of it is coming from Rug Pond. Rug Pond is chocked full of it. So now we'll figure out how to survey basically from Rug Pond down to the Torch River and then into Eskegemog as well. And this is a much bigger project that will need more organizations involved in. So that'll be a big project to kind of address and how we're gonna handle it, because when they remove the dam at Rug Pond, we don't want all of that just coming downstream more than it already is. We've got a couple pictures of it. So this is in the Rapid River. You can kind of see it has really distinct wavy leaves. Like once you see it, it's easy to identify. So you can see it's pretty dense there on the left, then it's a little more sporadic on the right. And then this is one of my biggest concerns, I guess, with it is making sure that it's not getting into Eskegemog, because it would do really well in Eskegemog, this plant would. So this is like a general idea of how much effort goes into understanding if it's there. So I'll go to each one of these sites and either throw a rake or use the GoPro and take footage of it, and then look at it later. So this is at the mouth of where the Torch comes into Eskegemog, and unfortunately, I did see that there is at least some making it into Eskegemog. So curly leaf will be a big part of.
What is the risk with it?
With it
plant?
spreading? Yeah,
Yeah.
actually, Rug Pond is the perfect example of what can happen with it, because I could barely paddle my kayak through it.
So what does it, like it's just so thick that you can't get through it?
Yeah, it grows right up to the surface and it basically outcompetes everything else.
Okay.
And so Rug Pond actually has quite a bit of Elodea in it, which is up here too, but you can't get through it. It spreads really easily. Like it can grow from a fragment of it. So even in my kayak, I was so nervous going through it because I could break it and then that little piece could refragment.
Oh, okay.
Rug Pond is like the perfect example. I should have put a video in here.
Where is Rug Pond?
It's near Kalkaska, so it's upstream of, the Rapid River. It's like probably, 10 miles upstream in the Rapid River. Right, because it's by Kalkaska?
Yes.
Yeah. It's further, it's off of Valley Road. We don't go all the way up. But. So this is Rapid River here. This is Torch River, and then this is Rapid. Yeah, the Rug Pond is way up.
But it's already making its way down.
Yeah. So it's clearly been there for a while. It's definitely been existing there for a while.
You really can't kayak up the Rapid River now.
No.
If you go from the Torch River and you want to go up the Rapid River,
Yeah.
you used to be able to kayak quite a ways.
Yeah, because it's quite shallow.
It's
Yeah.
Too weedy and too shallow.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of it at this map that I have back here. There's a lot of curly leaf in that darker green spot, like right at the mouth. There's a lot growing right there, which is concerning because then every time a boat comes through there, their prop can chop it up and then it's good right into the Torch and then coming down. So then in the Eskegemog natural area, so we've got, there's a handout over there for purple loosestrife, which is actually blooming right now. So we've been working on kind of managing the infestation along Hoyle's Drive, which is this road along the bottom there, but then now we are working with Cake Sisma they have a grant, so they're gonna chemically treat the Lattimore natural area because along the south side here, there's a lot of purple loosestrife, so we're gonna treat that here soon, actually. We tried to there's a type of beetle that will only eat the purple loosestrife plant, and we tried that for a few years and it didn't, I think it's just too dense. But the purple loosestrife is sad because it's actually a really pretty plant. There is a picture on the blue board over there. It's really easy to identify because it's got these beautiful, vibrant, like spindly purple flowers, but their seeds are so small, and one mature purple loosestrife plant can produce it's like 100,000 seeds or something like that. I can't remember the exact number, but it can just spread so easily even just with the wind, and then it can actually change the ecology because it'll trap sediment along the shoreline. So that'll be a big project that we're working on this year, soon actually, within the next couple weeks. And here's some pictures of it in the Lattimore shoreline, which kind of explains the difficulty of it because there's some plants that are growing like out of a stump, and so you can't easily dig it up. And it'll be, I feel bad for Cakes and Mud, the day that they're going to be out there treating it. It's not going to be easy, but it's going to be worth it. And then in the Torch Bayou, we've been working on managing another aquatic invasive, which we have here, Eurasian water milfoil. The map kind of shows my very rough drawing of where it is, with some marks on there. But we've been trying to figure out the best way to manage it because chemical treatment is not what I would like to do because of the current and some other factors. So last year we hand-pulled quite a bit of it, which is there's risk to hand pulling because it fragments really easily, and each one of these little guys in here, there's some that have just fragmented from being in this jar, can then re-sprout. So hand pulling is a very slow process. Like you put your fingers in and just super slowly like kind of shake the roots out, but then you don't want to lose any of the roots. So I started hand pulling this summer already, some of the smaller ones that we have, and then we're hoping to possibly change our method of treatment within the next couple of years. I'm optimistic that it'll knock it back. And here's some pictures of how it's growing in there. So there's a couple bigger patches like that photo on the right. And then there's a lot of places like this that it's like growing in between these sticks and logs, which makes it difficult for removal, even with chemical. Because we had chemically treated this for a while. And there's my contact information. Anyone have some questions?
Thanks, Sam. Samantha?
Yeah.
So there is a native, it's called swamp loosestrife, but it's different. So the invasive loosestrife has like a long spindly purple flower, but the native one has like flower, leaves, flower, leaves, flower, leaves. That is invasive.
Which one, the second one or the first one?
I don't think that one here is. This one on the left is.
Okay, that's the one.
Yeah.
Thank you. She's a pretty busy person, isn't she? Yeah, we're lucky that she's able to use her techniques and her talents with our organization. You know, a lot of us, I'm guilty of this, I like to drill down and get into the details. A lot of people are not necessarily into the details, but why is this stuff important to us? All of us, why? It affects our quality of our life, it affects economics. It's a place up here that we enjoy in its natural state, and then we get these invasives, and whether they're animals or plants that don't belong here, it sort of changes everything. It crowds out the natural vegetation that's here, maybe even some of the living animal organisms. So I think we all should care whether we live adjacent to water, we enjoy recreation on the water, or we just enjoy living up here 10 miles from the water. It's something we should be concerned about. Another reason, I said economics, and I hate to use other lake associations and lakes as examples, but I think I've shared this before. Lake Leelanau Association spends close to $250,000 a year on Eurasian water milfoil. it got away from them. They weren't monitoring what was happening, and they had huge infestations. They used divers, they used mechanical machines that look like barges, if you will, and they removed this stuff with divers and mechanically. Now they're getting ahead of it, and they're really making great progress, but we don't want this area to become like that. And so that's why it's important. That's why we exist, for things like that, to keep our eyes out, and Sam is a big part of how we're able to monitor that. So, thank you, Sam. Our speaker tonight is Dr. Jill Lattimore. She is a professor, a director. She's probably busier than Sam with all the endeavors that she has. She's from MSU. She, as I said, teaches there, but she's also the director of the recently started, officially recognized extension, MSU extension for lakes and streams, really concentrating on, I believe, getting, you can tell us more about it, but getting more of our lake associations and people on our inland waters working and talking and approaching problems and projects with each other. So she's going to speak tonight. She's an aquatic biologist, a senior outreach specialist at MSU in the Department of Fisheries and Wildlife. She's a founding member of the MSU extension I just mentioned, Center for Lakes and Streams. And I hope she's going to address, with all of her samples and her knowledge, some of these challenges that we're all facing as you get around the state and see different things. So please welcome Dr. Jill Lattimore, please.
Thanks so much. And bear with us, we have to do a little technology swap here. So, set it up over here. On the mic for a minute. Success. I love it when technology works right the first time. I feel like I should find some wood to knock on now. Here we go. There we go. All right, well, I was really pleased when Sam and George and everyone invited me to come and talk to you all this afternoon. When Sam told me I'd be in a pavilion, I didn't realize it'd be so nice with air conditioning. I thought I'd be in a picnic shelter. That's where I'm usually talking. She's like, oh no, this is nice. So especially today, it's so sticky out. I am really happy to be here, and it was so great to hear from George and from Sam about all the great work your Lake Association is doing and the 75-year history that you all have. It's remarkable. It's uncommon, right, to have such a well-established association that's out there investing in lakes, to have more than 50 people come out on a Thursday evening to socialize, to learn. It's really inspiring. So thank you. You make my job more exciting too. I actually live in Traverse City, so I'm a neighbor. I've lived there for the last 9 years after spending 8 years living in the East Lansing area at MSU. But I'm Michigan born and raised down in the Lansing area, and have traveled mostly throughout the Great Lakes region for my work. I've worked in Ann Arbor at the Huron River Watershed Council, and then came back to MSU after graduate school to the position that I'm in now. We've been there for 17 years. And we have our Center for MSU, Extension Center for Lakes and Streams. You probably saw we have a catalog of all of our programs back there on the information table, so I hope you'll grab one. You'll learn about programs like the Adopt-A-Stream program that your association is part of. I'm the director of the statewide Adopt-A-Stream programs, our volunteer stream monitoring program, and also the Cooperative Lakes Monitoring Program, which is a sister program to what Tip of the Mitt does. So we work really closely with them on things that Elk-Skegemog are part of. So really great to hear about your involvement with that. So what I'm here to talk about today is plants. What I'm not here to talk about is what herbicide to use to kill them. That's not what I do. What I am interested in is the role that these aquatic plants play in our lakes and in our rivers, the benefits that they have. That's right, benefits. I'm going to tell you how great plants are. But recognizing that there's some invasive species as well, ones that we want to be aware of. So I want to talk about that, and before I dive in, I want to give credit to my colleague Eric Elgin. His name's up on the screen. He and I work very closely together across Michigan. He's based in our extension office in Newaygo County, but together we do a lot of that work. He was out this morning on a lake that the Forest Service needed some plant surveys done on while I was at a computer putting the final touches on my slideshow today. So yeah, here we go. So this is me again. I'm at MSU Extension and our Department of Fisheries and Wildlife on campus. And one thing that's very important to us at MSU as a land grant school and with an extension program is that we get off campus. We come out into the community. We partner with partners all over the state, including lake associations, including the DNR, including the Forest Service, including the tribes, including just individuals who are curious about their lakes and streams and how to be a better steward of them. So do not hesitate to reach out to us. If I don't know a person who can, if I can't help you, I know a person who can in most cases. So what I'm going to talk about for the next maybe 25 minutes or so is we're going to give you a little introduction to aquatic plants. I want to focus on kind of appreciating them and all the things they do for our lakes. We'll talk a bit about the trouble with some of these invasive species, like the ones Sam mentioned. Then we'll dig in a little bit. We'll get kind of geeky about it, a little nerdy, and think about, you know, how do I identify this plant that washed up on my shoreline, or seems to be growing a lot around my dock, or I snagged it on my anchor? What do I need to look for to try and figure out what I'm dealing with? What resources are out there to help me? And then we'll do some show and tell, a little slideshow of some of our common aquatic plants. And of course, I have a bunch that I brought today. I have my trays. Sam brought her collection in jars, remarkably similar collections that we brought. So we've got them out here. And I'll encourage you, you know, as I finished the presentation today, I've got some nice magnifiers I just got. I'm really excited about them. They light up the plants. You can see their features really well. I've got labels in there that tell you what they are, so you don't have to try and figure it out. And yeah, some people love that hands-on part. I know I do. So everything in the trays is from Rotary Park. I got it on my way here. So if you saw a strange person with a rake and a cooler crouched at the lakeshore, that was me collecting things. And yeah, so you can see some stuff that you can see just right off the dock at Rotary Park. So our aquatic plants, when we think about them kind of from an ecosystem standpoint, we think about where they grow in the lake. That's the easy way to kind of divide it up into different communities. So, and if you think about your lake, this is a cross-section of a typical Michigan lake. Different plants grow right at the shoreline that grow out in the deeper water, right? And so we talk about plants that are emergent, so things like cattails, things that grow up out of the water. We talk about things that are floating on the surface, but rooted at the bottom. What can you think of that floats right on the surface but roots? Lily pads, exactly. That's our most common one. We have several different species in Michigan. Some plants just float freely on the surface without being rooted. And then we have a whole variety of ones that are rooted in the bottom and grow completely underwater. And those are our submersed plants. So we'll kind of talk about each of those groups, but we're really going to focus not so much on the emergent plants like a purple loosestrife or a cattail, but things that are out in the water more. And it's really affected by how much sunlight can reach these plants, is how far the plants will grow out in the depth of your water. And in really clear lakes, like we have in northern Michigan, sometimes the lakes are so clear, it isn't the sunlight that limits how deep plants grow, but actually the pressure. The pressure of the water, the weight of the water on top of them will limit some of those plants. Free-floating plants, tiny ones, either that or it's a really big frog. But no, that's a regular size frog, and does anyone know the little tiny plants floating all around it? What that's called? Yeah, it's duckweed. Often people will think it's algae, but they're not. They're a plant called duckweed. They're the smallest flowering plant in the world, and we have them in our lakes in Michigan, pretty cool. And so they are called duckweed because ducks love them. They will swim around with their beaks open right at the surface and just shovel them up. And then other submersed plants like these, we have a few that I'll show you later, but these tufts here that you can see growing up, those are a plant called wild celery. I have some here in a pan here. These are native plants, all good ones, and some other small ones growing around it. But often when we go out, even just right off the dock at Rotary Park, I look in and I see, 7, 8, 10 different species. And so, somebody who knows their plants and spend a little time looking at them can say, oh, here we have water celery growing up out of the ground with grass-like leaves. We have 4 different kinds of pond weeds. Sam mentioned the potamogetans, that's the scientific name for those. Lurking way in the background, EWM, that's Eurasian water milfoil. Like you usually see a diverse assortment of plants, and that's what you want to see. Just as if you were on a grassland, a prairie, a forest, you want to see a variety of different plants there. Because as we've all kind of learned, biodiversity is a good thing. It helps keep your ecosystem healthy, there's food for everyone, there's habitat for everyone, and that's what those plants can do for us. Speaking of habitat, fish love plants. Native plants are essential for our fish that we want to have thriving in our lakes. Fish use plant beds for spawning and nesting. Young fish hide in them, find shelter there. Bigger fish will cruise around the outside of plant beds or lurk there waiting for prey to come by. You get rid of the plants, you get rid of the fish. There's one of our predators, right? The pike, cruising along, waiting in a plant bed for an unsuspecting minnow to swim by. And I use the underwater forest analogy a lot because it's something that we don't always think about, that there's just as many kinds of species growing under the surface of the water as there are in our national forests growing around the area. And a lot of diversity, a lot of different things. We have 28 different species of those pond weeds alone. And there's 11 different species that live in our lakes that are carnivorous. The bladderwort that Sam mentioned, I'll show you a picture of in a minute. They have little bladders that trap the tiny plankton and feed on them. And then we have, they won't bite us, don't worry about that. And then, we've heard of Eurasian water milfoil as a bad invasive species. But there's 8 different kinds of water milfoils in Michigan, and only 2 of them are invasive. The rest of them are natives, and they look a lot alike, so that can be a little tricky. And it's kind of nice because Sam has a native one, and we also have invasive ones, so you can see the differences. Habitat, wonderful habitat for everything. What do they do for our lakes besides providing habitat? Well, they really help keep the water clearer. Time to feed the cat. Turn that off. There we go. She'll be fine. My husband's home. So water clarity and quality, they reduce the sediment for getting stirred up during a storm, windy days, boating activity. Having healthy plants rooted on your lake bottom is going to keep that mud, that silt on the lake bottom. And it will also reduce shoreline erosion. We often see if people decide to remove the aquatic plants from their lake in front of their property, what often ends up happening is they experience shoreline erosion. And I heard there are some engineers in the room, so here's a diagram that'll show you how that works, right? So think about it. You can just think about it naturally, though. If you have tall, plants, stems and leaves in the water, and a big wave comes in, those plants are going to create drag. They're going to absorb the force of that wave coming in towards the shore. And by the time it hits the shore, it's going to have a lot less energy than it would if there were no plants in the lake. And so having those plants there will reduce the erosion of your shoreline. Nobody wants to lose their property, right, their shoreline. So having plants, whether they're emergent, sticking up out of the water, or even just under the water, can really help. Again, it helps keep the water clear. You can go snorkel out there, one of my favorite things to do. You can see all sorts of cool fish and crayfish and so forth. And what we also see, in addition to erosion in lakes where aquatic plants have been removed, either intentionally or because of some kind of disturbance, is the nutrients in the water have to be eaten by something. The plants use nutrients like phosphorus and nitrogen that are in the water, but if there's no plants there, there's still going to be algae, And what we see is with the loss of the rooted plants, you have clear water until the plants are gone, and then it gets really cloudy with algae. Because there's food there, something's gonna eat it, and if there's no plants, it'll be the algae. So another consequence of being overzealous with plant removal, which we see in a lot of our lakes, unfortunately. And then of course there's the invasives, right? It happens. And so we don't want them to happen because, again, as Sam was describing, you can have situations where they crowd out all the native species. They're not good habitat for our fishes because fish didn't evolve with plants growing that thick. That's not the plants they're used to. It's not the plants they want. So it's bad for the fish. It's bad for recreation. It's bad for swimming. It's bad for a lot of things. So what we really want to focus on is, making sure people understand the problems they can have and the amount of money they can cost. George gave a great example of Lake Leelana's investments in Eurasian water milfoil control. That stuff like this happens all over the state. Regardless of what control measures you choose, they can be very expensive. So we want people to be aware of that and also to focus on prevention. Right? If we can keep these out in the first place, then you don't have to deal with the environmental impacts, the economic costs of dealing with them, and so forth. So there's lots of resources out there to help because it's unanimously known prevention is the best approach. And so I featured a few things that we offer through MSU. Through our Clean Boats, Clean Waters program, we have a mobile boat wash, just like Tip of the Mitt does, that we take all over the state of Michigan to offer boat washing opportunities for communities. We have designed signs. I was talking to someone just earlier today about the signs that we offer that can have tools attached to them to help remind people to clean boats, especially helpful at smaller launches. We have small grants that lake associations can apply for to do education or to get signs. And so forth. And we also work on another vector of invasive species. We all know that trailer boats move them around, but another way that they can move around is through aquariums and water gardens, right? If people go to a pet store and put all sorts of exotic plants and animals in a fish tank and then decide they don't want them anymore, they often end up in our lakes and streams. That can happen from classrooms. We do teacher education. We go to the Michigan Science Teachers Association and talk to all the science teachers about this because a study in Minnesota, we haven't done it here, but a study in Minnesota found that fully 50% of teachers who have a fish tank in their classroom release it into the environment at the end of every school year. Because nobody wants to take it home for the summer, nobody wants to deal with it, and so off they go. And so that's what we don't want to see. Plants like curly leaf pondweed could be found in an aquarium, and some of these others that we see. So our Ripple program works with nurseries, teachers, pet stores, that kind of thing. Prevention, of course, is not guaranteed. You can do all the things, do everything right, educate people, have a boat wash system, anything like that, things can still sneak in. How many of you saw the news about hydrilla coming into Michigan? Well, now you have. I don't have hydrilla here. You would probably want to escort me out if I had brought it, but hydrilla is a highly invasive aquatic plant. The state of Michigan and MSU and our partners have been preparing for this plant to come to Michigan for decades. And remarkably, even though it's heavily in the Ohio River, it's been found in northern Wisconsin. It had not made it into Michigan until August of 2023. It was discovered in a pair of private ponds way down in southwest Michigan, Berrien County. We think it got there through that second way. There's no boats coming in and off of these ponds, but that pond, a previous property owner had bought a bunch of pretty exotic aquatic flowers and planted them in the pond, and we think it was probably in the pots because it's just an underwater, no flowers, kind of a nondescript plant. But it grows 5 times as fast as Eurasian water milfoil. It can reproduce in more different ways. It's the worst possible aquatic invasive plant we could probably have in Michigan. But it was probably in the best possible situation. It's in private ponds, and the property owner said, heck, whatever you need to do to get rid of it. So the state had money, came in, monitoring, confirmation, herbicides, dredged both ponds completely out. To get rid of, over $1 million is being spent to dredge these ponds and dispose of the spoils and get everything out of there. And the monitoring will continue for years to come to make sure, because the ponds did have an outlet that flows into the St. Joe River. So there is the possibility that it could spread. So lots of interest in hydrilla. The identification cards that Sam mentioned are on the back table. We have one for hydrilla, and it compares it to the native waterweed, which is in this tray right here. Looks very similar, so it's good to know the difference. If you can't prevent them, which you should always try to, the next step is early detection. As many people as possible that live around lakes are familiar with some of these invasive species. So you know, if you see something suspicious, you can contact Sam, you can contact MSU, you can contact someone to let them know, hey, I think I've got something suspicious, can you please take a look? Because what we often find is that if you detect something early, you actually have a chance of getting rid of it. Otherwise, it's going to be, well, we already have 20 acres, so we'll manage it, but we may never get rid of it. So, you know, these pictures, if you can see them, are an example of the invasive species called starry stonewort, which I'll show you in a minute. Detected early, there's one plant, versus not detected early, there's literally acres of it under the water. So what we want is early detection. So the more you know, the better prepared you are to protect your lake. So we work with communities and lake associations all over the state to do early detection. You guys already have some programs going, but you shouldn't just rely on a few people to do all of that. Everyone who lives or plays on the river or the lake should know what these invasive species look like. So there's cards and resources, and I'm going to show some of those in a minute. We offer one called the Exotic Aquatic Plant Watch. Tip of the Mint offers similar programs where we use this really high-tech tool, which is 2 garden rake heads bolted together on a rope. I have one in my car, don't go anywhere without it during the summer, to drag the bottom of the lake and look for whatever aquatic plants you might have. We also use that all over the state to survey native plants too, but for invasive plants, this gets them right in our hand and we can confirm what they are. And look how happy the volunteers are. All right, any questions to this point? I'm going to dive into some geeky ID stuff next. Keep going? All right. All right, so let's say you find something. What should you look for to try and figure out what you have? So I'm going to point out some characteristics that those of us who know our plants, our aquatic plants, are going to be the things that we look for. And if you are, you know, who here is a gardener? Got some gardeners? Yeah, you know your plants. You know what to look for. You know, you'll see some things that are similar to our terrestrial plants. One thing in particular, though, for aquatic plants, we very rarely use the flower as a way to identify the plant. And the reason why is that most of our aquatic plants, water lilies, you know, notwithstanding, have very, very small, short-lived flowers. And so you're unlikely to see them or be there or find the plant when it's flowering. For example, this plant, waterweed, which is the one that looks like that scary hydrilla, I'll show you in a minute, that's the flower. Like, that's being held in someone's fingers. See how teensy tiny that is. And I've only seen it flower twice in my life, and I've made a career out of this. So don't rely on flowers. And the other thing we suggest you don't rely on is color. Because the color of aquatic plants varies widely depending on the conditions of the water. So, you know, one of the things we look at, what do the leaves look like? Are they simple or are they finely divided? Do they just look like a typical smooth leaf, or are they divided into little sections? Those are 2 really important characteristics that help us narrow down what type of plant we're looking at. Here's some examples of different finely divided leaves. This one here on the right, that's milfoil. They look like feathery leaves that are in a whorl around the stem. Other plants will have a forked leaf or a highly branched leaf. So those are some of the first characteristics to look for. And knowing that, if you ever take a picture of a plant and you want to send it to Sam, you want to send it to someone else, we're going to want to see what the leaves look like. You would not believe how many times, I bet you Sam can say this too, somebody takes a picture of a plant that's just in a wad. It's like, I have no idea what this is. Like, you need to spread it out, show us what the pieces look like. Or take a picture through the water. Yeah, probably not gonna be able to see what it is. So get it up so we can see what the leaves look like, and that's gonna make it much easier for people to help you identify what it is. How are the leaves arranged on the stem? That's another important question. And do the edges of the leaves look smooth, or do they have teeth? Are they serrated? That's also important. The invasive curly leaf pondweed has serrated leaf edges. Are the leaves arranged on the stem in an opposite way? So there's two like that coming off the stem, or are they alternate where one leaf comes up down here, here? No two leaves are the same place. Are they in whorls around the stem where there's 3 or more? Or are they basal? There's no stem at all and the leaves just sprout right from the lake bottom. That's also important. Here's some examples of some Michigan aquatic plants that we often see. 2 of them I have up here. I don't have this one. This is fern pondweed. The leaves are alternate, so if you look at that image, you can see that the leaves are coming off in alternating locations along the stem. Elidea or waterweed has whorls of leaves, small leaves, but they're still whorled. And then on the far end, I've got this here too, down there at that end, water celery that has no stem at all. It's like grass, it just grows right from the bottom. We also look at how the leaves are attached. Do the base of the leaves wrap and clasp around the stem, or do they just bump up against the stem? Or is there a leaf stalk? Like if you hold a maple leaf in your hand, it's got a stalk, right? Many of our aquatic plants have that too. And sometimes you have to count the veins. So we're getting really in there now. Usually we don't, but sometimes we do. So resources, here's the new identification cards. Those are hot off the presses from MSU. We have some that Sam's provided over here. If you are part of a group or an organization that wants a bunch of these, we can provide them, and there's actually a handout there. We can ship them to you in packs of 100 for free. I have literally tens of thousands of these cards in East Lansing. So we have them, we can get them shipped to you if you're with an organization who might want to get one to everybody. And we have them for all the major invasive species, and the way they're designed, we work with a scientific illustrator to make the images for us. And on one side is the invasive, on the flip side is the native that looks most like it. So you can tell the differences. So they're a handy resource that way. And then if you find the invasive, it tells you how to report it if you do find it. Soon, so soon, I thought I was gonna have this for you guys today, but it's arriving in East Lansing tomorrow, and I was there yesterday. So we have written a new field guide to the aquatic invasive plants of Michigan, and it's online right now. You can look at a PDF, you can look at it electronically on our website, but we will have them for distribution soon, very, very soon, like tomorrow. They're a spiral bound, water resistant piece. They're like this big. They have the images on the cards, but several more species as well. So yeah, if you go to CANR, which is College of Ag and Natural Resources, .msu.edu/CLS, which is Center for Lakes and Streams, under publications you'll find the electronic version. And soon we'll have a link to where they'll be for sale for $10, but also if you come to an MSU extension program for the next couple years, we'll probably have them with us and we'll just hand them to you. So those are coming out very, very soon. All right. Some other great books, both of which are over on the table just for you to look at. Don't take them, but you can look at them. These are both from the University of Wisconsin Extension. Our colleagues over there have written 2 really nice books. Through the Looking Glass is a little older. It has line drawings of the aquatic plants of the upper Midwest, and a lot of really good just kind of descriptions of the plants and where they grow and the features that they have. There's poetry in this book. It's a really nice book. And then a great companion to it is the relatively newer Aquatic Plants of the Upper Midwest. This is a photographic field guide. Excellent photos. My friend and colleague Paul Skowinski, this is the 4th edition that he's done of that book. And it gets you right down into really great images of the different plants you may find in your lakes around here. Both are available from Amazon. Or call your local bookstore and ask them to order it for you. Or you can order from the University of Wisconsin too. And if you really, really want to geek out, the aquatic plants of the wetland plants of northeastern North America, it weighs about 20 pounds. It costs $95, but it's an amazing book. It's the book. It has keys to all these, and I had a kind of a fangirl moment 2 weeks ago. I got invited to come to the Michigan Botanical Society. I don't know if you've heard of the Michigan Botanical Society, but for people who really, really love plants, they meet every year and do an annual foray with field trips all around where everybody can go look for cool plants. And it was in Escanaba a couple weeks ago, and I was delighted to be invited to help lead 2 days of field trips on lakes up there looking at the aquatic plants. Lakes that don't have any invasive species at all. They were amazing and beautiful. No houses on them, but just lakes. And Garrett Crow, the co-author of this book, 84 years old, came and paddled with us both days. I'd never met him in person before. I was just like so excited. My graduate student came with us. He signed a copy of his book for her and dedicated it to her. And oh my gosh, it was great. So if you really want to geek out, this is the book to dive into. Or you know someone, great Christmas idea. All right, show and tell time. Let me show you some of the plants that we do see in our lakes. So as I said, I'm going to focus on the underwater one, the submerged things. So first, floating leaf plants, things that float on the surface. Some of the most common ones you're going to see, of course, are the lily pads, right? We have the ones that make the yellow flower, like the one you see up here, larger than life. The white water lily, which you can see right off Rotary Park right now, flowering. A plant called water shield, which is a small kind of a football-shaped lily pad. And then there's also some other plants like pondweeds that have mostly leaves and stems under the water, but they'll put up a floating leaf that can look like a small lily pad unless you look closely at it. So our lily pads, here's the 2 major ones we're going to see up here in this part of Michigan. And if you look at them, you can see the white one on the right, the yellow one on the left. And you can see the leaves are shaped quite a bit different. The white water lily has a very circular leaf that looks like Pac-Man, right? There's a notch cut out of it, looks like a piece of pie. To me, it looks like a green Pac-Man. While the yellow water lily is more football shaped, more heart-shaped lobes on that leaf. And that's what's to look for. So hey, you want to amaze your friends on the next sunset pontoon ride, be like, I can tell you what color flowers that lily pad makes without even seeing the flower. You know, if you take anything away from today, it's that. All right, has anybody seen this on the water before? Things that look like that? You know what it is? Yeah, lily pad roots. These are the dead roots of a yellow water lily plant. They're huge and massive, and they will, if they start to decompose in the water, they'll float because gases and stuff. They smell terrible if you break them, by the way. But we get calls every year. Somebody thinks there's a dead octopus floating in the lake. I'm like, we're in Michigan, but okay. Alligator, I've heard too, but it's these. So you might see that. Here's that water shield. This is the one that kind of looks like a lily pad. Maybe you've seen this before. It's often among lily pads in this part of the state, but no notch. See, it's just a complete, and all these plants are native. I'll tell you when I show you the bad ones. This is a good one. I love what they call it in the South. They call it snot bonnet. And they call it snot bonnet because on the underside of the leaf, especially early in the summer, if you feel it or even look at it, if you can see that picture really well, it has like a clear mucilage on the underside. It keeps muskrats from eating it. They don't like it. And so they're really slimy. And kids love them for that. It feels really good on a hot day too, I'll be honest. Okay, a bad guy. We don't have it around here yet, but this is a free-floating plant called European frogbit. It looks like the cutest, tiniest little lily pad you've ever seen. The leaves only get to about 2 to 3 inches in size, and the flower is much tinier. To me, it looks like the flower of a strawberry plant. And it's also like a strawberry in that it will grow a runner and grow a new plant, and then another one, another one, another one, another one. And they're not actually rooted to the bottom. Their roots just kind of float underneath the plant. And it's one to keep an eye out for. We mostly see it for many, many years. It was only found along the Lake Huron and connected waters all the way up to Lake Sault Ste. Marie. But in the last only handful of years, it's moved all the way across Michigan to Grand Rapids. Primarily, it seems through state game areas. We have a few of those around here. We think it's because it's found where people go waterfowl hunting. and they take their duck boats back into the cattails and stuff, and this stuff sticks onto their boats. And if they don't clean that gear, it can get transported. So that's European frogbit. And it's much smaller. Those of you who can see the screen, there's lily pads, which are like this, and then the European frogbit is only a couple inches across. So it's often like up against the cattails because it floats around. It's not rooted to the bottom. So that's where to look for that. All right, that's our floating lake stuff. Now let's look at the stuff that you might not notice so much because it's under the water. And we'll look at the ones first that have just a simple leaf. So they could grow in different arrangements. We'll start with the ones that don't have a stem at all. And water celery is one of them. I'll also call it wild celery. That's another name for it. It's not related to the celery we eat. But we have some here in the tray and also in the jar. And it just has these long ribbon-like leaves on it. And then at the right time of year, which would be right about now, if it's ready to flower, it will send up a corkscrew-shaped stem. It goes all the way up to the surface of the lake, and it'll have a tiny little flower attached to something that looks like a green bean. And so that is our water celery, a really beautiful underwater plant that waves with the water movement. It's really lovely. And then up in the UP, where we have a lot of water that's it's considered soft water lakes because the alkalinity is a little different. We have lots of really low-growing little rosettes that grow on the bottom, but we don't tend to see those around here. Other simple-leaved ones include the waterweed or elodea that I've mentioned a couple times. We have some up front here in Sam's jar. You can kind of see some growing here. Long stems with little whorls of 3 small leaves around the stem. Very common. Fish love this plant for nesting and hiding out in when they're tiny little hatchlings. And the leaves just come right out of the stem, no leaf stalk or anything like that. Here's the bad guy. That's hydrilla. That's the one that they dredge the ponds down in Berrien County for. You can see it looks pretty similar, right? Pretty similar, but a couple features about it is that it tends to have more like 5 leaves in each whorl, and they're serrated. There's teeth on the edges of those leaves, and even often on the underside of the leaves. So that's one to look for, and if you can see the map, you'll see it's been found throughout southeastern U.S. for a long time, but it's making its way here now. A little star, see it? It just made its way here. All right, so again, here's waterweed, not hydrilla, only 3 leaves per whorl, no visible teeth. This is our good guy. I don't want you guys to go down to Rotary Park and see that, because there's acres of this there, and panic. No, this is the good guy. This is waterweed. All right, next will be the pondweeds. We have, as I mentioned before, 28 species of pondweeds in Michigan, and they take all sorts of forms, from really big leaves to really narrow leaves. I've got a narrow-leaved one here for you to look at. They will always have alternate leaves. They will always have simple leaves. And those leaves will always have a mid-vein that you can see going up the center of the leaf. Then it's up to you to figure out which of the 28 species you got. But those are all our pondweeds. And here's an example of a couple. On this side, we've got sago pondweed that has really thin leaves. I have some of that here. Illinois pondweed that has bigger leaves, but they're all related. Some more examples. You can see the leaf stalk on some of those. Helps you identify which one you have. Some of the leaves actually clasp the stem instead of having a petiole. And then here's our bad one, curly leaf pondweed. And weirdly, it also has teeth on the sides of its leaves. It's the only pondweed that does. And I think the leaves look like lasagna noodles. They're rippled, like lasagna. Yeah, green lasagna. And we have some here for you to see. And Sam was talking about having seen it in the system. I got it at Rotary Park. It's growing right here. Not a lot, there was just a few. But again, zoom in on the leaf, it's rippled, it's got teeth on the edges, there's a prominent mid-vein. This little guy in the corner, the turion, is something I'll talk about because it's important to recognize that curly leaf pondweed was actually introduced into Michigan over 100 years ago. Somebody thought it'd make great fish habitat. We've learned better than to intentionally spread species now, but where we find it across Michigan, sometimes it's really bad, crowds out everything else. Other times it's just kind of there. And it's with the other plants, and it doesn't seem to have a big ecological impact. That's the ideal scenario, if you're gonna have it, to not have it be problematic. Another interesting way that curly leaf pondweed grows is that it gets its advantage because it grows really early in the year. When the water is cold still, there might still be some ice on the surface, curly leaf pondweed will start to grow to kind of get an advantage over the other plants. And by the time it's really hot, like now, the curly leaf pondweed will typically, unless you have a really cold lake or a river with cold water, it'll die back and it'll leave behind these pokey little hard turions. It's like an overwintering bud. And those will fall to the bottom and just kind of hang out there till next spring when it just starts to warm up a little bit and then boom, new plant grows out of it. So sometimes this time of year, I will throw out a rake, I will get a patch of curly leaf pondweed, pull it into the boat, and these turions will just come raining out and be banging all over the bottom of my boat because it knows that its season is just about over and it's producing these turions. You don't want to step on them, they're very hard and pokey. Sago pondweed, this one is another native, another good one. I have some up here and you can see how the leaves just branch and branch and branch. It's really beautiful in the water. And that's more than you need to know. More than most people need to know. All right, now, those are all the ones with the simple leaves. Now let's look at ones that are finely divided. This is what I mean again by finely divided. So we have our water milfoil here, which has the feather-like leaves. We have bladderworts, which have very, very branching leaves, and then many of them actually have the namesake bladders, little sacs on the leaves. Those are where the actual trap doors are for the prey, is on those little bladders. There's another native plant called coontail that has a whorl of leaves that look like little fish bones. So these are very delicate leaf plants because of how divided they are. Oops. I really love the bladderworts. I mean, any plant that eats animals is pretty cool. But we have a lot of different kinds of bladderworts in our lakes. I don't have any to show you today. There weren't any readily available at Rotary Park, but some of them can get quite large. And they make beautiful flowers that look like tiny little orchids. They'll either be yellow or purple depending on the species. Some can get quite large, others are relatively tiny or almost impossible to find until they flower. So they sometimes are confused with milfoils. People see a long plant with a divided leaf and they think it might be a milfoil, but the leaves are shaped very differently. This is one that makes the yellow flower. We have this purple that makes a beautiful purple flower. All right, water milfoils. Everybody wants to always learn about the water milfoils. So again, the leaves always look like a feather. They're almost always in rows of 4 around the stem. We have 8 different species, only 2 are invasive. We've all heard of Eurasian water milfoil. The other one is one called parrot feather milfoil. It's really uncommon. It's an aquarium plant, and we've just found it in a few selected areas in southern Michigan. So Eurasian water milfoil is the one that gets all the press. So here it is, Eurasian water milfoil. Some key characteristics. Like any milfoil, it's got a feather-like leaf. Importantly, for Eurasian water milfoil, those leaves will have 12 to 21 pairs of leaflets typically. Lots and lots of those little leaflets, the little filaments that make up the feather of the leaf. Most of our native milfoils will have far fewer leaflets. So I'll show you some pictures in a minute. A couple other features about them is that, I know I said don't rely on color, so don't, but often when we see Eurasian water milfoil, the stems will be kind of pinkish or pale in color. They're not green stems. And also, typically when you peel Eurasian water milfoil out of the water, it gets kind of limp. And so our native milfoils tend to be stiffer. They're just stiffer plants. So those are other clues that you might have it. One tricky thing that we've learned in recent years about Eurasian water milfoil is that it can hybridize with one of our native milfoils called northern milfoil. And that the hybrids can be resistant to some of the herbicides that work against Eurasian milfoil. In fact, that's how we discovered it. Why did the herbicide stop working? Is because we had a hybrid plant. So when we have those hybrids, their characteristics are a little tricky to tell apart. You really need to have their DNA tested to know what you're dealing with. Here's some examples of native milfoils. You can see how similar they look to Eurasian, right? they're still long, they have whorls of feather-like leaves, but the world water milfoil has very tight whorls of leaves, so we have a jar of it right here, where the whorls of leaves are very, very close together. You can come up and look at that later, and compare it to Eurasian milfoil, where there's spaces on the stem between the whorls of leaves. The northern water milfoil in the middle, the one it hybridizes with, will have under 12 pairs of leaflets, sometimes only 5 or 6 pairs. And then there's one called variable leaved milfoil, which is less common, but we do see it up here. And sometimes you'll have a leaf that isn't part of a whorl, it's just there on the stem by itself. So there's little clues that let us know what we're dealing with, but you can see why just having a blurry picture of a wadded up plant isn't going to allow us to tell you what you're dealing with. This is probably the one that people confuse the most with milfoil, and it's coontail. Good native plant, it's got wishbone shaped leaves instead of feather shaped leaves. So when you see it down in the water, it looks a lot like Eurasian water milfoil or some kind of milfoil, but once you get it in your hand, you can see that. It also feels plastic. To me, it feels like a plastic aquarium plant that you had in your fishbowl as a kid. It's very tough. Another plant called water marigolds and buttercups that also have finely divided leaves. But again, they don't look like feathers. They're not milfoils. Aw, there's a little buttercup. Isn't that cute? The buttercups will put up a little flower on the surface of the water. And milfoil flowers are very nondescript. You probably won't notice them. They're just a little spike that sticks up out of the water. And I actually have one here. We can get you a bouquet of Eurasian milfoil flowers. All right, as I'm wrapping things up, a few other things you might see when you're out in the lake that aren't among the plants that I just talked about. And one of them is muskgrass, also known as Cara. My very first pan up here has some in it. It's everywhere, and it's good. It's a native algae. It's actually a macroalgae. It looks like a leafy plant, but it's not. It doesn't have true roots, leaves, stems, flowers. It's an algae, just like kelp isn't a plant. It's a kind of algae. And there's a whole lot of different species. They're hard to identify, even for experts. We just discovered one that's native in 2 lakes in Michigan that's never been reported in Michigan ever. We think it's just because nobody ever takes time to look. So it's exciting. We'll get an academic paper out of it or something. But from a management standpoint, not that big of a deal. There is one of these that is one to look out for, an invasive, and that's starry stonewort. Starry stonewort also grows on the bottom of the lake, but it is distinctive because it produces these little stars. They're very small. You can have several on your fingertip. But at the base of the algae, you pull it up and it'll have little white stars, and that's one of the ways it reproduces. And this can spread really quickly. This is the one that I showed way at the beginning when I showed you the difference between early detection and waiting too long. It can reproduce really quickly and get really thick on the bottoms of lakes. Haven't seen it in this area yet, but it's definitely over in northeast Lower Peninsula, like Sheboygan area over there. We're seeing it making its way around the lakes up there. Did you know we have freshwater sponges in our lakes? Yeah, we do. They either will grow encrusting on logs or rocks, or they'll just grow like green fingers sticking up from the bottom of the lake. They're green because they have an algae that grows inside the sponge, but they feel kind of crunchy because sponges have like a silica inside them that give them their structure, just like a sponge you would find in the ocean. But we have them in our lakes here too. Yeah, there's lakes around Traverse City. I go out and see them all the time. They're pretty fun and different. Sometimes they can be very, very bright green, so they can easily be confused with a plant. But once you start looking at it, you're like, this has no leaves. What is this that I'm looking at? Has anybody seen anything like that in the lakes? No? Either this is a picture from a dock in Traverse City where they pulled it out and for the winter, and it had all these weird, like wormy looking things on it. But more commonly, you see these balls, like growing on a stick or a dock, or even on the bottom of your pontoon if you leave it in the water all summer. Sometimes we call them lake brains because that's kind of what they look like. But these are also not invasive. They're native little tiny creatures that create colonies. And they're filter feeders, so they're cleaning the water, and they need high quality water to survive. And so up here, they're actually kind of common. So keep an eye out. The most common ones, again, are these just clumps that you'll see, and they can get quite large. You know, big. And that's my arm. I'm sitting in my kayak. There was some in the lake right next to me, and I lifted them up. They're very heavy because they're mostly water, so they're very, very heavy. And so if you see them, leave them be. Know that you found some. Bryozoans, colonial animals living in your lake. All right, so we all love aquatic plants now, right? We want to keep them, we want our fish to be healthy, we want our water quality to be good, we want our sediment to stay where it belongs and so forth. So, you know, we all have a part to play in protecting them. Don't get too crazy with like raking out the plants around your shoreline or applying herbicides if they're not needed. You know, there's a lot of application of herbicides to native plants and lakes in Michigan, and in a lot of cases it's unnecessary. And also enjoy them, enjoy seeing them, learn to identify them so you can appreciate them, share them with your neighbors, talk about, you know, the corkscrew flower stalk of the wild celery, or, you know, the interesting thing that a water lily flower, here's another cool fact, the white water lily, when it first opens, it's a female flower, and then it closes, and the next day it opens, it's a male flower. Isn't that cool? So cool, right? But who knows, right? I mean, they're doing cool stuff out in our lake. So I'm going to try something that's always very risky. I'm going to try and play a video, and it's working, yes. So get under the water, see what's down there, under the water lilies. Again, what you can do with a GoPro underwater camera and see when white water lilies first sprout, they also do a corkscrew thing before they get to the surface, the flowers. So you can see that happening with the water lilies. This is a lake in Grand Traverse County. And often when I do this, I see, you know, the fish swimming by and stuff. So here's another one. That's my kayak. And drop the camera down under the water. I hope that at least some of you can see this. But that's a big bladderwort floating up there. They don't have roots because they don't need them because they eat animals. You can see lots of different, you know, you've got your floating plants, you've got rooted plants, you've got plants under the water. And what you also have when you have plants is fish. So here in a minute, you're going to start seeing all the bluegills swimming around in here. Because, you know, I have a colleague who did his PhD work at MSU looking at lakes in Michigan and seeing if having aquatic plants made a difference to the fish community. And what he found was a resounding yes. Basically, as I said before, plants, you have fish, no plants, no fish. And so if you are interested in it, get in there, put your mask and fins on, snorkel around, or send your grandkids out there to snorkel around and see what they see. Because you're not, you know, it's a big difference. Where the plants are is where the animals are. Turtles, frogs, even, you know, birds like great blue herons and green herons and that kind of thing need that kind of system to grow. So I know it's a little dark, but trust me, there's a bunch of bluegills swimming around on the screen right now. All right, so yeah, there you go. That's a better one. Say some illustrations done by the same person who did the wonderful plant drawings for us. Just to kind of encourage, you know, seeing and really seeing all the cool stuff that happens in your lake, because it really is like an underwater forest. Thanks for listening. Question about fertilizer, yes.
So are submerged plants affected just like shoreline plants are by excessive runoff of fertilizer?
Yes, absolutely. If you have a lot of fertilizers running off of lawns or parks or farms and they make it into the lakes, that phosphorus, that nitrogen, that potassium that's in the fertilizer will cause these guys to grow more than they should too. Absolutely. It's fertilizer for aquatic plants just like it is for land plants. Great question. Any other questions? Anything else you want to ask about? If not, I am going to be around, so I'm not going to run out the door. So if there's something you want to talk about, I'm happy to do a little show and tell up here after we get over the formal part of our meeting.
Well, thank you again.